The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this episode are that of the guest and host and do not necessarily reflect the values of sponsors or other associated organizations. Welcome to the Parental Compass by Family Education and Support Services. I'm your host, Bobby Williams. Subscribe to the show. We drop a new episode every week. Subscribe. Any platform lets you do it. We'll let you know when the next episode drops. You want your child to do well academically. Still, there is a fine line between being helpful and supportive and being so overly involved and overly invested that it's actually disempowering and negatively impacting your child's mental health. Part of what's interesting about today's episode is that the Parental Compass, us, are meeting the Parent Compass. The Parent Compass is a book co-authored by today's guest, Cindy Muchnick. It is all about navigating your teen's academic journey. It was a great conversation. I'm excited to share it with you. Check it out. And then Heather had a newsletter called the Parental Compass, and it's like, well, let's just call it that. That sounds good. We need
that works.
Good name. So
yeah, well, great minds think alike. I think the more, you can follow a few compasses or compi. I don't even know what the plural is of compass, but my co-author, Jen Curtis, she gave me, I'm not wearing it today, but she gave me a little necklace of a compass as a tangible reminder to kind of keep, whenever you go off track, to kind of come back to that parent compass and sort of check yourself and check the way that you're parenting so that we can, do it in the most healthy way for ourselves and for our kids.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I think about the show is like, it's not strict rules. It's just some ideas to kind of steer you in the right direction. And, well, taking it to education, for me, school was always an incredibly painful process. Like I had learning disabilities and it was just unpleasant for me. And what if you have a child that just isn't into academics and they're not motivated? I mean, what can you do there?
Yeah, no, that's one of the hard things that parents, kind of struggle with is what do you do with a child who isn't academically motivated and school is kind of their job every day? How do you kind of work around that? Or how do you help light a fire? Or how do you, gently push without pushing too hard, whatever it might be, or suggest or sprinkle, I sometimes say, sprinkle in little ideas. And honestly, I think a big part of our goal as parents is to appreciate the child we have in front of us instead of the child that we're trying to inauthentically create. And that's a quote from our book, which is the idea that, every kid, regardless of whether they like to learn academically in a school setting or whether they like to learn lots of different things that you might not learn in a classroom, whatever they're wanting to learn and curious about, it's our job to hook into that. So if you have a child that has a unique interest, or, is interested in the arts or interested in video games or interested in, something that's less traditional, a trade, for example, a child is interested in electronics and plumbing or working with their hands in leather or whatever it might be. There are a lot of other options out there other than directing our kids to college. So many kids go to community colleges, they go to trade school, they go to different, they go into the military, they choose these alternative routes. And so, finding what, the reality is kids still have to go to school through high school. I mean, that's kind of a law. So in order to help them get through high school, if you can hook into what it is that excites them outside of the classroom or helping them find things that they're learning in the classroom that pertain to what they love to do outside the classroom. For instance, if you're into electronics and engineering, you need to take an interest in math and you do need to kind of do the work that goes with math, or you're interested in becoming a musician, then being in the marching band or studying the arts or, taking, the art class at school is important. It's not kind of a fluffy class. It's something that will help, in your next steps.
I worked with youth in foster care for a long time, and a consistent challenge for the youth I was working with was they had kind of a low pain tolerance when it came to academics, or if something got challenging, it was very frustrating. And I think that's a lot of children's experience. But are there any ways that we can help build more resilience in children?
Absolutely. That's one of the themes in our book is teaching kids, so the importance of self-advocacy, but how to be self-advocates. And as parents, we can help instill that in our kids starting at a very young age, as parents or foster parents, or, as the adult in kids' lives. In terms of building that resilience, I think really comes from, them learning that they can speak for themselves instead of us being the one that's always speaking for them. And that can start in the doctor's office or the dentist office when they check in and say their age and name and birth date and what's wrong. That can be when they have a problem in school and you brainstorm with them a little, like, oh, I hear you, that sounds so frustrating. What kinds of things do you think you want to do about it, or should we brainstorm together? And helping equip them to, go to their teachers, when they're feeling frustrated or don't have help, or go to those other adults that they trust in their lives to find support. And, it really is, we hear resilience. I think if COVID has taught us anything, it's that our kids have a lot of it already. It's inside them, and we just need to let them kind of use it and show it and kind of practice it. And I think that starts with self-advocacy. It also starts with, parents who ask, I think, good questions, of our kids, because we need to get to know them a little better when they go in their rooms and close the doors and get on their phones or social media, or when they're just not as communicative, which might happen more in the teen years as they're, becoming more independent and trying to kind of separate a little bit more, which is pretty natural, to ask good questions that aren't just, how was your day at school? Because usually that gives us just the flat answer, or how did you do on your test? And to be questions that are more measured. Instead, we can ask questions like, I know you were working so hard on that project. Did it work out okay? How did the presentation go? I loved that you put in a lot of effort, as opposed to what was the outcome of the project. Or sillier questions like, what's something funny that happened at school today? Or what's your theme song of the day? Was it a positive day? Was it a negative day? What lyrics would you use to describe your day? Just being a little more creative in the questions we ask, and then making sure that we really are good listeners. And I think that's probably the hardest for me. I'm more of a talker, as you're probably seeing. So learning to really, use our body language and connect with our kids, and to really sometimes just all they want to do is dump, and have somebody trusted that can listen and not just jump in and fix.
Yeah.
That's, we have a tendency to do that, to want to fix. And because we know more, and because that's coming from a place of love, and we think that's what they need. But really, sometimes they just need a shoulder to cry on, or someone to dump to. And for you to say, what can I do? Do you just want a hug? Do you just want me to listen? What's the best for you right now? What are you looking for? And sometimes they just say, I just want to tell you, that's it.
Well, I think that desire to like swoop in and fix, like you don't want to see your child suffer, but you can't do the learning for them. And if you're doing too much for them, it's almost disempowering. Like you're trying to be helpful, but by doing too much, you're saying you can't do it on your own.
Yeah,
And you hear so much about like helicopter parents or very involved parents, and you want to be involved, but where's that line where it goes
absolutely.
from like helping to,
The harming.
yeah,
Yeah. So the Parent Compass, to take a step back, was really written for a couple of reasons. One was the catalyst for writing it really was Operation Varsity Blues in, early 2019, when, 40 or 50 parents went off the rails and were, creating false identities for their kids and helping them find ways to cheat on standardized tests, and really, going to jail over, I mean, that was the ultimate extreme
yeah,
helicopter
wow.
parenting, and Jen and I, my co-author, picked up the phone and called each other and just said, "Oh my God, this is just a gut punch." We had both been private college counselors, worked with students for years and years, helping them navigate high school and helping them put together their college applications, and in an ethical and honest and true way at whatever academic level these kids might be, either high achievers or kids who are just hoping to go to, get an associate's degree, whatever it might be. And what we found was these helicopter parents, some of their characteristics were kind of appearing in our office, not, in the extreme unethical ways, but we were getting emails at night that sounded like they were from the parent, not the kid. And the parents were making their appointments and the parents were speaking for them. And the parents were, kind of taking over and micromanaging and controlling these kids' lives. And what it was producing were kids who couldn't self-advocate and who were depressed and unhappy and felt like their parents didn't think they could do it and who were very fragile. And so we decided to create the Parent Compass to really say to parents, here are the things that are really beneficial that you could be doing that are in service of your kids. And then here are the examples of when it's really not working and you should pay attention. And so we put case studies in from students we worked with. We interviewed teachers, we interviewed heads of school, we interviewed thought leaders and fellow authors, we interviewed psychologists to really get a sense of like, what are parents doing in this generation?
Could you give an example? Like, what are some things that are helpful and what are some things parents do that aren't working? Like, I assume faking the emails at 8 p.m. doesn't work.
The good things that parents are doing are a little bit of what I referenced before, but mostly kind of walking beside their child. If you think of it in terms of like a visual, walking beside and standing beside them instead of leading or pushing. So by being kind of shoulder to shoulder when they're having a huge problem, or by being shoulder to shoulder when something amazing happens, I think that it's a position that we take, and it the hardest part I think for parents to do is understand that by doing this fixing, which you mentioned, and micromanaging, that comes genuinely from a place of love because we want to help and take away pain and this and that, by letting our kids falter, by letting them make mistakes, by letting them fail. And as hard as it is to watch, all of the data, all of the statistics, all of the studies tell us that's one of the best things we can do. So think of the playground as the parent where the kid that falls down, the parent just wipes the nose and wipes the knees and tries to smile and get them to not cry. And then the parent who says, "Oh, wow, that looks like it hurts," poor, "Oh, do you want a hug? Are you okay? Get yourself up," whatever it is. Obviously not when your kids are in an extreme, if they've broken their arm or something. We're not talking
Yeah.
about that, but it can start at this young age where we show our empathy and we remind them that, we've been in their shoes. Sometimes telling our own stories of our own failures and our own mistakes are great ways to kind of walk beside our kids. It again makes us more human and accessible to them. And I even tell parents, if you have to make up a story, that's okay too. If it didn't happen to you, you can bend the rules a little bit and say, this did happen to me. Because when our kids complain about their homework or complain about a teacher or complain about whatever the usual things are in their teenage life, how upset they are they didn't get invited to the party, or how disappointing it was to get a bad grade or whatever, we can relate to all of that, right? And we can say to them, "Oh, I totally feel you. That sucks. I agree. I'm so sorry that you're feeling that way." And then we can,
Validating to be
yeah,
like,
we can validate it and then see how they recover from it. And sometimes that recovery does involve us doing a little bit of role playing or a little bit of counsel and advising, but in a very gentle, not, preachy way, in a, sprinkling, suggesting, but also, letting them figure it out. And then when they do, you can say, "Oh my gosh, do you remember last time when you went through this? Look at that. You just, got yourself through something like that again. You're capable. You can do this."
yeah, failure is inevitable, and that's how you grow. And then you look at your life, and when you see like you've gotten through past hard times before, it's like when you go into that next hard time, it's like, I know I can survive this.
Yep.
And yeah, that's just so important.
Yeah, you're better equipped the next time. We all know that the next time around. But if we don't give our kids the opportunity to feel that, and we take that away by, doing it all for them, then what happens when we're not there, or what happens when they leave to go to college or
Yeah.
go in the workforce? They just feel, they describe, college students today as fragile teacups because their parents have set their alarm every morning, have made their lunch every morning, have, done everything for them, that they don't know how to approach a professor if they have a question. They're afraid to, or they, just, it's very unsettling, I think, to kind of see what the results are of that love that we're trying to shower on them, but that's just too much.
Even talking on the phone. I mean, a lot of people are having a hard time talking on the phone these days. And I'm like, I love talking on the phone.
Yeah.
It reminds me, I've heard this great metaphor before. Maybe you've heard it, where it's like a butterfly when they're in the cocoon, or when they're becoming a butterfly. It's like you can't just kind of cut open the cocoon, because then, just some gooey creature will come out. But when they're in the cocoon, it's like they have to struggle to kind of move whatever they have around. And that's what creates the butterfly, is that struggle. And so, I mean, I think that's
I
very
love
true
that.
in life. Yeah.
Yeah, I really love that. That's a great metaphor. And we were on a podcast maybe a year ago with Dr. Dan Peters called The Parent Footprint. And Dan said something that kind of stuck with us, which we've quoted him a lot. And he, I think, heard it from another speaker, so it might not even be his original quote, but the idea that when our kids leave our homes at whatever age that is, whether it's right after high school or whether they stay home more years, what's left when they leave is your relationship.
Hmm.
That's kind of all that's left between you and them. And so if you are careful and not just careful, but intentional about your relationship with your kids in these years when they're still, growing and changing, under the roof of your house, then when they leave, that relationship is still intact, and they want to continue to turn to you, in the future, and to have, an adult relationship with you.
It's
So,
such a pivotal time as a
yeah.
teenager, and you're just kind of learning how to be yourself.
Yeah.
Well, this was a great conversation. I'm so glad we connected. Do you have any closing thoughts or ideas you want to share?
Well, I mean, I just want to say I'm so glad that we found you, and that, through our similar titles, but also I'm excited about the work that you guys are doing too in your organization. And I just want to say that if parents, want to learn more, to take a look at Parent Compass on Instagram, or our website is parentcompassbook.com. And we love to speak in schools, and join other audiences. We speak to teens, we speak to parents, all of that. And we hope that people will help us spread the word, getting the Parent Compass movement going, and trying to practice, checking ourselves, really for the sake of not just ourselves, but also for these important kids that we all feel so fiercely protective and loving of. But to learn to really just appreciate them for who they are, and know that we had our chance to be teens. So we got our chance, we lived through it, and now it's their turn. So we'll just do the best we can. Fingers crossed.
Right on. Thanks for being here, Cindy.
Thanks so much for having me.
So great to meet you, Cindy. The Parent Compass. It's good to know that there are other compasses out there navigating us to true north. This has been the Parental Compass by Family Education and Support Services. I'm Bobby Williams. We'll see you next week. Peace!